Good evening, friends and family. How are you all this evening? Wonderful. I'd like to take a moment just to welcome you all to St. David's Night. My name is Crystal Miners, for those of you who don't know, and I will be happily sharing the podium with my best friend, Miss Julie Fogo.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome.
Basically, we'd like to get the night rolling because it's definitely a night full of substance and interesting things. So I'd like to begin our evening. I'd like to welcome the Honorable Wayne W. Parent-Chief, JP MP, Minister of Community and Cultural Affairs, to the stage.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Just want to welcome my Permanent Secretary and staff from Community and Cultural Affairs. And I also see, well, Mr. Tucker was here. Oh yes, he's here. He keeps changing position. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to St. David's Night. As the Minister of Community and Cultural Affairs, I'm very pleased to be here tonight to join in a celebration of the unique culture and history of St. David's, aptly described by filmmaker Lucinda Sperling as an island near Bermuda. This program, which is part of the Department of Community and Cultural Affairs Historical Heartbeats lecture series, is a wonderful example of government's partnership with community groups. Although sponsored by our ministry, this event would not have been possible without the assistance and participation of the St. David's community. This includes formal organizations such as the St. David's Island Indian Committee, as well as individual artisans such as doll maker Ronnie and groups such as the St. David's Native Roots Dancers who have lent their talent to this program. We are particularly indebted to Mr. St. Clair Tucker, who worked closely with the Historical Heartbeats Committee to organize the many details that ensured, and I'm going to tell you that ensured the success of this program. It's already successful. I'd also like to extend a special welcome to our keynote speaker, Jessie Littleton. She has been kind enough to join us from Massachusetts to share information on the very important work that she has done reclaiming Native American languages. Her talk is particularly appropriate given the long-standing connection and reconnections between St. David's Islanders and their native roots. I want to thank you for joining us here tonight, and I hope that you enjoy this celebration of St. David's. Thank you very much.
In order to get the evening started, I'd like to share some information with you that I think would help to put tonight's event into context. If you could just bear with me, I'd like to give you an indication of just how strong this movement is. The St. David's Indian Committee was established in February 2001, which later moved under the St. David's Island Historical Society, which is a registered charity. When the St. David's Indian Committee was established, individuals first set out with a focus to reconnect with Native American lineages from North America back to Bermuda. In celebration of our genealogical findings and with a strong desire to reunite, the committee organized its first festival on June 15th and 16th, 2002, with the second in June 2003. These were planned in commemoration of the reconnection and were held to keep our people close together despite the great distance and past years apart. Since then, the St. David's Indian Committee has grown, much more research has passed the table, and cousins come by the dozens. In our excitement, the committee has made it a goal to try to host a festival every other year, rejuvenating that part of the spirit of Bermuda and our ancestors. In addition to the biannual festivals, the St. David's Indian Committee has also accomplished a number of other things to stay connected. Some of these events and programs have been made possible by the Department of Community and Cultural Affairs, Department of Tourism, and the Ministry of Education, Youth, and Sport, with the list of supporters of this caliber growing day by day. Among the things made possible were the educational cultural sharing in which Antoine, the Wampanoag tribe, visited local schools and shared about types of homes, use of animal skins, as well as other cultural lessons, and participation in Camp Pequot, where Native American guests and local dancers performed and shared their dance with the students of this summer camp. As mentioned, the St. David's Indian Committee has accomplished more than just the biannual festivals, as we have managed to put out an official calendar every other year, which displays memories of old Bermuda and shares a bit of culture, such as herbal remedies and traditional recipes that have been passed down through our families. The committee also puts a major focus on educating the youth by having developed its own student cultural exchange program between private and home schools, both here and abroad. The mission of this exchange is for our Bermudian students to learn about Native American culture and customs, and for the Native American students to, in turn, learn about Bermudian culture and customs, with a particular emphasis on the Native American heritage that we both share. This student cultural exchange is being planned for May 2008. In addition, the St. David's Indian Committee has managed to develop its own local dance groups, both men and women. Through all of the things shared, dance was one of them, which these groups will share with all present tonight. The committee has also planned a few social nights, which are strictly for the purpose of keeping our people together in the off-season of the festivals. With all of this being said, the committee continues to be invited to participate in numerous programs and events throughout the island and overseas, giving thanks for the opportunity to share who we are every time. As we move through the year, we are planning yet another event. The Native Bermuda Festival is to be held on June 23rd and 24th at the St. David's Cricket Club field. So we encourage you to please come share your culture and join us as we're weaving our people together. Thank you, and we hope that you enjoy tonight's event. So moving on to the first major part of tonight's event. Lucinda Sperling originated from St. George's and is by far one of Bermuda's best film producers. She has received local and international recognition for her insightful work. Two of her most popular films are St. David's Island, An Island Near Bermuda, and The Cahal. Please sit back and enjoy this wonderfully entertaining commentary on the uniqueness of our community.
A St. David's Islander is the best friend you could ever have, and the worst enemy. They will give you the shirt off their back, or sink your boat. In St. David's, Christian names were forgotten, and one earned a nickname from either their character or an event in their childhood.
Nicknames then there's, everybody had a nickname. In fact, even today, if you were asking about some of the people living on St. David's, what few is left, police officer came down to you, and if they didn't give you a nickname, you would know who he was talking about half the time, you know. And I think that goes back as far as the history is. Everybody had a nickname. You know.
When I was a baby with family, and what I've seen one or two pictures, I was pretty chubby, you know, not that tall. And most of us had nicknames anyway. Everybody West End had a nickname of some sort. Some were not very complimentary, I don't believe, but they weren't called that all the time.
Called the old Billy Boys. Yeah. Did they know your name? Did he? You want to go after George? Sure.
That's a hunk like that. That's great. Like a loose something. Hunk like loose. And it's stuck. You people, I've never done that in my great name. Go ahead and live and die.
I don't know if you man be here somebody hunk around. It's everybody wants to get a nickname.
This machine, it had like water into the engine. I said, this machine has got like, it's got interjection sound like it's cracking. Where we are talking. I said, so he told me, he says, well, why don't you get an Alka-Seltzer, put it in your machine? And from that day, he used to call me Brett.
It's a nickname. I didn't know nothing about how you spell it. I never really know. I didn't know how I got it. Everybody used to be able to have a nickname.
So I think a lot of nicknames come from different things that the kid done. And it stuck with it. You know. Like one of my favorite cousins, his nickname was Pumpy. So why am I like Pumpy? You know?
St. David's Islanders, commonly known as Mohawks, are from a mixed background of white, black, Irish, Scottish, English, West Indian, and American Indian. Of particular popularity is the Indian connection between the Islanders and the Pequot Indian tribe in Connecticut, originating, it is said, with the miners' family.
The West End was always different from the East End. The West End of the island were mainly white people. I remember when I was growing up, there was only about 2 colored families in the West End of the island. The rest were East Enders, and they were considerably mixed with Indian blood as well. They claimed people was called Mohawks, apparently they were not Mohawk Indians. And the black and white were mixed down there, much more so. Of course, you had completely white families, but there was an awful lot of mixture.
So what did they call your grandfather?
Red Man.
Red Man.
Well, he was a red man. Everything, his house was red, and he even had red balls. He was one good man. And I love him to death.
What did you say he was a red man?
He was red.
He had
Red skin,
red hair.
red hair, red mustache, and everything.
Did he have any Indian background?
No, he's
Irish?
Irish. Irish and Scottish.
This is one guy who, when they passed away, a lot of history passed away, they used to call him Jesuit. And this guy was, he always used to tell me before he died that the Indians had been come one day and look for the lost tribe. Always used to tell me. And now that we have these so-called Pequots come to Bermuda, trying to sit there between the Mohawks and the Pequots. But when they first started a few years ago, I was saying to my wife, I said, I really wish Ira was still here. Because they always used to say, one day the tribes are going to come and look for the lost tribes, you know. And I was always meant to believe that the tribe of Indians that landed here, like Jacob Moss and all these guys, the Mohawk Indians. And then we got a new crew who comes along and say the Pequots or Pequots or it's just like I remember. In fact, if they done a DNA test, then you might be the ass to, because you do have some of these offsprings around here that's left from this Indian tribes once a days. And because I was getting mentioned to this guy that why don't we just have a DNA test? Because today, DNA test, we can go back and we can check these tribes and see if we are related to Loquats or Pequots or whoever.
Whether it was their Indian heritage or not, the St. David's Islanders were never fond of shoes. At most, shoes were worn to church or on other formal occasions.
There's one time, this is good stuff. When his brother died, right? So, all the time I was he had a few suits. Must have had about 40, 50 years. Had it so long, it changed his color. And, pair of shoes. You know, hardly ever wore shoes. This foot was spread like the toes, spread like big toes and farming fish. Anyhow, on the way to the church, they have a rehearsal, the little time roster. On the way to tell the music, we lived on rock and the horse shy and scared from the end. He was walking back with his shoes tied to me. They said, "What's that?" With red shoes. When the horse shied, he shied too. He struck him. He didn't try to get away, he tried to stop his horse and everything. And he knocked the top of his too. So he took the shot out, pulled the shot out, and like a little piece of the red tied up his tooth. And the girls in the churchyard buried him and everything. So one of his brothers went to why he was wearing shoes. They said, "You think I'm crazy?"
I was like, thought my two that was spoiled my shoes, funny before. And they rock. He ran from me. No, you don't get a shoe. Come on. You like to keep the shoes. You know, rather than pressing his thing.
You know, like shoes, but people think that since they're around, people don't have no shoes. If he had shoes, when he went out, he just didn't want to wear them because he was going to rock all the time and not in the water all the time and in the boat. Take a boat and go fishing and come back and live our lives. Had a good life and travel all over the United States. And as we got on the tractor trailer out one time, we went horse running, we went through every state in Texas. The only place
I want you to leave them being busy and keep listening. No mistake of what? You thought it was a toe.
oh God, my name is the hell out of it because everything. You say, I'm going to don't do that, she will do it.
And I had calf business. One day I went home, Daddy, my daddy. I have to wrestle all the time and Mrs. Smith and a little smile come up his face. Glad you do this at home.
You should have that next time. This thing hurt.
I went back to the mine and I'm going to eat some of these strawberries. One day, other day, eating a leeway. So God Mr. Smith, didn't I tell you to whistle when you eat those things there? Yes, Mr. Smith. Well, I'm going to, you got to be the doctor's father, somebody got paid. All right, Mr. Smith. Okay, all right, so I was doing the more, and I stopped it. But if he'd have told me I could eat some of them, I'd have felt better. But I didn't like it worried after that.
That's why I wanted you to listen so you can eat it.
Yeah, that's why. Then I said, no, I didn't say nothing back to food like this. That's why you gave me, keep listening.
Put me on time, put me in that tub with this clothes she was going to wash. And she gave me, I was good looking on down, looking at that wet mess. I was wet as a lick stain. It's horrible. I said, yeah, I won't do that no more.
Gotcha. Obey.
And the principal, Mr. Bashar, called in school. Then used the strap on, she took them days out of ball of heat. And apparently, so then she took his ball of heat, really stuck him on the head, and she now went back to school.
I said, take your hands out of your pocket. No time to play them. Get them out.
You only get rid of him.
I like nobody with their hands in their pocket. And if I'm talking to anybody that's looking down there, I say, hey, I'm not down there, I'm up here.
The U.S. Space in 1942 split St. David's in half. Their way of life was threatened more than any time before. It is a testament to their strong character that they adjusted and even today have retained much of their character and way of life. In 1996, the U.S. baseline was given back to St. David's, and the long-forgotten name of Southside was reinstated. The relentless modern and social pressures, however, are leaving their mark as the St. David's Islanders are passing on and being diluted with new residents referred to as foreigners by St. David's Islanders. St. David's, although whole again, will never be again what it once was.
St. David's changed quite a bit.
Good. More Christine there, dinners, smells and noise. Everybody small, wood house, and they was happy.
That's what got once a day. We had first class pilots and everything. And then they talked about people being stupid. We had common sense. You can have all the education in the world, but if you don't have common sense, what good is it?
Well, still John's we always have a problem with foreigners coming from Hamilton. The Brits, all the other people always blame the Brits for that, letting a lot of those foreigners put down here. There's called avant-gardists and them days, and really, it wouldn't do for those old people to be around today to see what's coming on, because they would really be fired up and pretty bad.
Yeah. The one that appears to us, and us some of them who don't like us can leave us. Sing from here. But you only sing your old song, don't you? Well, I'm going to sing a song that I always sing to my wife. You ready? I fall in love. It will be forever. I'll never fall in love in a rested world like this is. Love has ended before it begun in many moonlight kisses. To cool in the warmth of the sun, when I give my heart, will be forever. I will never fall in love. In a moment, you can feel it. You feel that way too. When I fall in love with you.
I think the wonderful thing about what Lucy did, she really captured the essence of St. David's, and we have an opportunity to cherish the memories of those who have passed before us. But I'd also like to ask you to join in me thanking, we actually have some of our movie stars here with us tonight, so I'd like you to just join me very quickly in thanking them for their good nature and being a part of that. To introduce our first treat tonight, I have Ms. Dora Hollis. Ms. Dora Hollis was born on April 6, 1925, in St. David's to James and Florence Miners. She was the fifth eldest daughter of the family. She married Stuart de Wilton Hollis and had 6 children. After 82 years of life in the East End, we can revel in her reflections on her childhood, growing up in one of the most beautiful parts of the island. Please help me welcome Mrs. Dora Florence Lucille Hollis.
which we grew up as a loving family, loving the neighbors, loving our school friends, and we had lots of fun. We enjoyed life. You know, St. David's was a place that you could love, because there was so much for you to do. We had to go to church 3 times a day. Then we had to come home and get lunch and go back to the Salvation Army, dance, sing, apple pie, cakes, and everything. St. David's was the place to bring up the families and teach them and love them and show them the facts of life. It didn't consist of who you were, but what you could be. That was the main thing that Reverend Hughes taught us. You had to face the world with a smile and always look to learn something every day. And every morning when we got out of bed, we had our chores to do, 5 o'clock every morning. Then come in and get a bath and go to school, get dressed to go to school. And I'm telling you, we enjoyed it. And when you were on St. David's, you couldn't pass a house. First it was the Ritzons, then it was the Foxes. Came right down to Eddie Richmond, Miss Birchall, Cousin Eddie. We had to say good morning to them. You couldn't miss no one. It was a loving family on St. David's. Everybody seemed to love each other. You know?
Okay, Mom, listen.
And
can I just ask you a question, Mom? Who were your parents?
James W.F. Myers.
And your mom?
She was Lottie Ianthea Lamb. And her father was Lugo. Her father was Carpati. That's right. Anyway, we enjoyed life. You know, it was a learner every day. And you learned by watching what the elders done and what your eldest brother and sister done. We had to mind them. If we didn't, we got licks. Plenty of them. You know, I've never been beaten with a strap. It was always only end the stick, big as your index finger. Jimmy Myers was a beautiful, beautiful person. Him and my mother, Lottie Myers. And he corrected you, but he always said he didn't want to leave you feeling bad towards him, so he gave you candies. Awful feeling, but the candy was nice. You know, we loved our parents those days. We loved them. And everybody was nice. We shared everything. And Honky knows we went in and out. You never passed a house unless you had to speak. Then they'd call you in and say, "Come here, child, I've got something for you." It would be pancakes or what is it, Johnny bread or something, you know, baked rolls. It was a beautiful, we had a good, solid bringing up to meet the world.
Mom, how many other siblings or your family, brothers and sisters, did you have?
I had 4 sisters and 6 brothers.
And did Papa and Granny ever, even though you had all those people in the house, did they bring other people in to live with them?
Oh, yes. He was a man that he felt sorry for. I used to get mad when I saw the drunks coming over here and him getting up and feed. You know, what? That was him. I had a beautiful father. Father that loved you. I mean, he loved you.
What would that be?
Oh. He was very ungrateful. I ain't doing it to that. But my mother said that he was the smallest and skinniest man for 16 years old. 16. And you know, the Ritson family, my family, the Fox's family of people, and the O'Connors, we were just like a bunch of sisters. You know, we helped each other with everything. I love St. David's. I love the way we were brought up. And Reverend DeShields, I have to thank him every time, because he came to our house every Sunday. In between that, the father used to take us out. Every Sunday, he came in to talk and pray with us and give us the facts of life. And the facts of life was to be honest, truthful. Even if you went out and in somebody else's garden, you had to tell them that, well, you know, the vegetables look good, or my brothers took us there, you know. We had fun living. I don't think the families today have enough fun and have enough time to love the children, to love each other. You know, Thurston, honestly, he was a father, a brother, a friend, and everything. He made me all sorts of furniture because one time I was the favorite. You know, I was a favorite in the family. And Thurston made me furniture, playhouses, bought me nice clothes, and took me all around with it. So I've been a very fortunate child. You know, my mother said that when I was born, the nurse, Alice Carter, threw me in the crib. And she said, I haven't seen my baby. And then she went to the crib. I was laying in a blood up, almost just a little chin, and nerves was sticking out. And it's God. I've been born with him, protecting me, and it's still doing it. Still protecting me. And I'm still smiling. Jimmy Fogarty, then Uncle Jay never, Uncle does. He never smiled much. You know, everything he was strict with. But to go down the street to catch the ferry boat to go to school, it was a pleasure. You felt good about everything. But I didn't worry about that, but as I grew older, I found out that it was a lot of prejudice on some days. And I was a little Vicky girl. Vicky. Honestly, I went to church. The first church we went to on Sunday morning was the Chapel of Ease. I used to see, come on, sat on the left-hand side. He sits over there, you know. Blacks were on the other side. Yet one morning, when I got to church, I ran up to West End, and I sat right in his seat. Came in, and he made signs, get over there again, but I kept my head. I ain't even looking at him. But he was a great friend of my father's, and he never told it. But Neiman and Gladys, Cousin Percy, and all them, we were on the black side. So that was prejudiced. They were on the black side. It was a pleasure as a child to go to the Annie church. Same color and everything. That was when I was a child, I used to think that. But it doesn't hinder you from welcoming the world, your neighbors, if you went to St. George's or Hamilton, because our father took us once a month out riding, and we started in Crowell, and we went to the Napier's house, not all in one day, next time, and we went to Hamilton, Henry Mead, Hawkins, and now I have to cut myself off because if I get started.
One question. What was Jimmy Minor's profession?
Oh, he was a boat builder, you know. He repaired boats, ships that came in, shipwright, and he couldn't read nor write. But he could look at that table, look it down there, and tell you what it was. And he drew plans on the sand. He had one up patch around the house that he used to sweep and smooth out, come home, put his plans out with his tape, you know. He was I don't know. If he had an education, I don't know what he would have been. You know, because he was a good father.
He might have been Premier Bermudian.
Oh. But he wasn't brought up on St. David's. He was brought up on St. George's. I hate to say this, and I'm going to say it. His mother was a black slave, and he was born in a cave. And when he married my mother, he came back on St. David's. So he was a good man. He farmed. I never seen him have any money from vegetables. We had to take vegetables all over St. George's down the cut. And anybody could walk in his farm and take anything they wanted, you know? He was a good man, and I loved him.
Now you see what I like to say to you? It's my first girlfriend. My first love. Love you, Bob.
Ms. Hollis is just one example of the many hidden treasures that we have in our community in St. David's, and we really do have to treasure them. So please, thank you. Okay, so up next, Veronica Ronnie was born in St. David's and educated at St. David's School, later attending St. George's Secondary. As a small child, she was not enthusiastic about school, but had always taken a liking to playtime with dolls and crafts. To this day, Ronnie is still making banana dolls and other crafts, as she is an established local artist and craftsperson. Despite this not being her sole limitation, it is by far what she is most famous for. In addition to her arts and crafts, Ms. Chameau is also very interested in St. David's history and is a trustee of the St. David's Island Historical Society, as well as an original member of the St. David's Indian Committee. I am pleased to welcome Ms. Ronnie Chameau to the stage.
And good evening, one and all. And thank you so much. Wasn't that a lovely story? That is so nice. Thank you, Mrs. Hollis. That was really interesting. Now, what I would like to do this evening is honor some of our St. David's women. As you look at their faces, if we could have the trying to get the pictures ready to show on the screen. One could not get to a doctor or hospital, and by their healing methods, of course, and they became their own doctors and nurses. Not to mention the excellent cooks that we have on St. David's, or we had. Our staple food was from the sea, and of course the farms. And Bacon Day was Wednesday. There we go. Bacon Day was Wednesday and Saturday, and for breads and cakes. And of course they were baked in the brick ovens. I guess many of you have seen the brick ovens in the old homes today. The really popular bread, of course, was the Johnny bread, bacon-on bread they called it. And it was always done on a flat skillet on an open fire. And that was really popular in those days because it was an easy recipe and it was filling with lots of butter on it and a nice hot cup of tea. Many recipes was passed down and we are trying to keep them alive. This evening I would like to touch on crafts. Every day, every lady had a craft to relax by after a hard day's work. Crochet, embroidery, knitting, tatting, needlepoint, darning, quilting. Crafts was passed down to their children, and even today we produce beautiful needlework. During intermission, we have a display in the front of the stage, and most of the displays that are shown are over 100 years old. Here we have all the beautiful faces of these ladies, and a lot of you know these are your mothers, grandmothers, and probably great-grandmothers. And as they say, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, it took St. David's, they raised all the children, because everybody was your mother, really. And if you did anything wrong, then the whole St. David's knew about it. We had the lovely cooks on St. David's. We had a restaurant on St. David's called the Log Cabin, and my grandmother owned the restaurant, Miss Kathleen Minus. And of course she had, you know, it was really basic cooking. It wasn't all the fancy stuff that we get today, but all the basic stuff that we have. And of course here we have Ma Helen Fogo, and she was an herbalist, and you know, you would call her for anything, and she would mix it, the concoction up, and you got well. All the foxes and the lambs and the pictures. And Teresa McKellen, she lived in a little wooden house in St. David's, and she was blind, and she lived on her own after her husband died. And she was remarkable, she really was. And now I'd like to go on to weaving. This lady here is Mrs. Maury Fox. Her name was Pansy Fox, and she was a master weaver in St. David's. And she wove with the palmetto and the pandanus palm, which we call the screw palm. You know, the palm tree that has like pineapples hanging from it, it looks, and the bags and all the weaving that you see. Of course, I have a few pieces here on the table. And this here that you see is the palmetto weaving. And of course, the pandanus palm, she would weave bags and whisk the chimney with. They made brooms from the palmetto. It looks like a palmetto, but they think they're palmettos, but the Chinese fen palm. They call them scrub palmetto. And we have the broom from that they make. And of course, with the palmetto palm itself, a lot of intricate work was done, and the beautiful hats were made. Could we have the next? And we'll show you the lovely hats and the slippers. That's the hats and the palmetto. They used to strip it with a pin and with all the decoration that did around. And with the slippers and the bag at the back. And we have them on display on the table. And of course, from Carter House. This bag here was made by Mrs. Edith Hayward. And she was a master weaver, and she was before Mrs. Fox. And this bag belongs to Mrs. Barbara Roberts, and she let me photograph it, of course. And look at the roses and everything, the intricate work that she's done. And it's all made from the pandanus palm, the screw palm. So we had some really beautiful weavers. Someone asked me the other day why is it just St. David's? And I guess the St. David's Islanders really carried on the weaving hats and so on, because they used to call them David's Island hats. I'd like to buy a David's Island hat. This lovely lady here is Miss Eva Minus, and she was a teacher on St. David's, and she taught many of our mothers and fathers. She had a one-room schoolhouse, wooden. She never married. And of course, in those days, they taught for like, by threepence a week probably, or sixpence a week. Outrageous prices they taught for. And she was a stately looking lady. And we often wondered, where did she go to school? And where did she get her education? Some said she went to Berkeley. I really don't know. I've been trying to get the facts of that, So in closing, I would like to honor a lady this evening, and I'd like for her to stand up. And that is our last cook, with all the beautiful recipes and everything you'll see in our calendar. That's Miss Darlene Pitcher, the one and only. I used to love, well, I still love her. But when I was a little girl, I just fell in love with Dolly, and I used to follow her all over St. David's. Right, Dolly? Always liked Dolly. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for giving me time to stand up here and talk about St. David's, which is my heart. Thank you.
Family. Thank you very much, Mrs. Remote, for that. I made the mistake last year of showing up to a social function amongst some cricket fans and players wearing the wrong colors, and I was sent home just about to change it because I had on a polka dot red and white top with white shorts. And I haven't worn those colors since this evening, and it was not intended, but I was already told that this is the wrong night to have on my red and white. But I am a Fogo and still very much a St. David's fan. I have the pleasure of introducing my Aunt Beulah. This lady claims to be a mere leaf on a St. David's family tree with many branches. She was born in St. David's to Sidney and Eileen Carlington on October 18, 1943. As a young girl, she moved out of St. David's to Mount Hill, Pembroke, where she remained until her adolescent years before returning home to St. David's. Years later, she married Winston Fogo and then moved to My Lord's Bay, Hamilton Parish, where she resided for 5 years. Thereafter, this leaf finally blew over and back under its native tree, St. David's, and she has been there ever since. This lady is very active within the community, and as a member of the St. David's Indian Committee, she handles all guest accommodations. As she is always making sure that every guest has a home, may we give this lady the hospitality that she gives to many others. Please welcome Mrs. Beautiful.
Good evening, one and all. She is wearing the wrong colors. That's Baylor's Bay Stewart. Good evening, all. I have the privilege tonight to give honor and recognition to some of our Bermuda's selfish heroes. The individuals that I will be talking about all have one thing in common. Not only are they all men rooted out of St. David's, but they are all veterans of war, with a few still surviving today. We are very proud as a community to have bred such great men, and we will strive to keep memories of their greatness alive, even after their passing. St. David's has always had a strong sense of community, oftentimes where we depend on each other for strength in times we need it. And this can now be understood as we see tonight the strong backs that we stand upon, having seen Ronnie's presentation before this on our great women, and as we now are about to see with some of our great men. Please give your undivided attention as I share with you a slide presentation of our St. David's War veterans. The First and the Second World War. One of the first veterans will be Granville Fox. Granville Fox is a veteran from the First World War. He first joined the Bermuda Militia Artillery and was later sent to France in 1914. He later joined the Lincolnshire Regiment. Mr. Fox was in the same shelter as Mr. Livingston Pitcher when Alden was killed by a grenade in 1917, having survived the grenade himself. Next, Steve. Albert Ernest Lamb, Private PVRC, 38th Ottawa Battalion, 163rd Canadian Infantry, killed October 29, 1916, aged 36 years. Albert was born 1881, son of Joseph and Jane Fox Lamb. After Albert left a wife, Isabella, Aunt Izzy we called her, and several children. A memorial service was held for Private Lamb on December the 19th, 1916 at the St. David's Chapel of Ease. Next. Howard Alden Pitcher. Howard left Bermuda in 1915 with the BVRC, son of Kennedy Pitcher, brother of Teresa McAllen. Private Pitcher was captured, held prisoner by the Germans. He returned to Bermuda in 1918. Next. Alden Livingston Pitcher, Private BVRC, 1st Battalion, Lincolnshire Regiment, killed in action February 26, 1917. His mother, Mrs. Irene Pitcher, received the news that Private Pitcher was killed by a grenade while in the shelter with Granville Fox. We didn't have a picture on this gentleman, James Archibald O'Connor. Private O'Connor, 1st Battalion, Lincolnshire Regiment, bachelor from St. David's, killed in action April 26, 1918, age 17. A letter dated 1918 from an unknown soldier reported that he found O'Connor's grave in a war cemetery on the battlefield of a village in France. Next. Leslie Pitcher, Private BMA, left Bermuda, 1940. The last news, he was sent a picture postcard to his sister, stating that he was alive and well, addressed France. Next. Granville Ivan G.I. O'Connor. Granville O'Connor left Bermuda with the BVRCs. He returned to Bermuda in 1944. Victor O'Connor. Private O'Connor joined the BVRCs aged 18. In 1944, he was sent to England for training with the British Regiment, then sent to France. O'Connor returned to Bermuda in 1947. Next. Robert Harrell Minus was born the 7th of March in 1935 on St. David's Island. Mr. Minus enlisted in the United States Army the 14th of April, 1964. He was promoted to Staff Sergeant the 14th of August, 1965. During his service, he saw action in Vietnam. During his service, he received Good Combat Medal, Vietnam Service Medal, Combat Infantryman Badge, and Vietnam Campaign Medal. On completion of active duty, he served in the U.S. Army Reservists. This ended 3rd of August, 1967. Staff Sergeant Minus now lives in Mass, USA. Randolph Ralph Richardson. Randolph Ralph Richardson was a member of the Bermuda Militia Artillery Band. After the outbreak of the war, he, with a few other members of the BMA, went to Canada and joined the Royal Canadian Air Force. He went to Europe and served as an air gunner and pilot, and flew around 20 bombing missions over Germany as an air gunner. He returned to Bermuda after the war. He was later killed on a bicycle accident in Bermuda. Next. Philip Blam, better known to all St. David's Islanders as Hunky, was a member of the Bermuda Militia Artillery. He joined the BMAs at the age of 17 and spent the first 3 years of war in Bermuda. He then volunteered for the Royal Air Force, completing his training in Moncton, New Brunswick, with other officers from Bermuda and the Caribbean. He was one of only 4 black Bermudians officers who were selected to serve in the RAF. His title was Leading Aircraftsman. After training, he was sent to England December 1944. At that time, the Germans were bombing England relentlessly. According to him, bombs were flying everywhere, and he asked himself, "Oh, Mama, why did I ever come here?" One bomb exploded about 100 yards from him. March 3rd or 4th, 1945, while in England at an airfield, the Germans bombed it, causing Hunky to get his leg injured. He was in hospital for 10 days. In his ward was a German prisoner. The German couldn't speak much English, and of course he couldn't speak German. He said he was a little intimidated. The good thing, he said, neither could move. After the war, he volunteered for various duties in Germany, France, and England. May 8, 1947, Hunky made a surprise return to his birthplace, St. David's. In his words, his late wife and sweetheart Iris almost passed out when she saw him. She was shocked at his presence. When the word got out on St. David's that Hunky was home, the set was on. This is another popular site of Hunky, his well-known residence for a while at the west end of St. David's on the water. We called it the Sugar Shack. I will say no more to that. Ladies and gentlemen, we are very proud to have with us tonight Mr. Hunky Lamb and Mr. Harrell Minus. Would you kindly stand?
You know, a lot of people, my mother used to get offended when I used to tell a lot of these jokes. But I think if you can laugh at yourself, then others don't bother you. So, it's a lot of funny things St. David's Island is doing, and I guess most Bermudians. But it was such a hilarious time growing up down in St. David's. I remember hearing stories about one of the nicknames, I don't know his first name, but Swerve. He went looking for a job. So the guy said to him, what's your name? My name is Schwab. He said, how you spell that? As Shwee, E-R-B, Schwab. You know, and I was looking at Dennis Lamb, and they had his son up there, C.A. C.A. used to be like a waiter at his restaurant. So one day, C.A., this guy ordered a steak, and C.A. came out with his thumb holding his steak. So the guy said, C.A., man, you got your thumb on my steak. Then what you want me to do, drop it again? There's the funny things. I remember hearing about, I'm just going to say Nelson, I'm not going to give it, it's a cousin of mine. But one morning Nelson woke up and his mom said, Nelson, what do you want for breakfast? He said, Ma, just some tea and bread. She said, Nelson, but we don't have any bread. He said, well, toast would do. Oh, man. You know, some funny stories I used to hear. I heard another story one time. It was when the Air Force first came to, when the British first came here, and the first car or vehicle, motor vehicle, was a Jeep. So a group of St. Davis guys were riding down the road, and they looked down the road, it was at night, and they saw these two lights coming. So they said, hey, Bill, let's go ride right between them two bikes and scare their minds. So anyway, the first guy went through there and went right in the center. Blam! So the rest of us spun around. Why get out of here? Said, why was three of them? Said one didn't have his light on. I love them though. Yeah, that's so funny. Like you hear things like, well, I know the majority of everybody in here knows about this outside bathrooms, toilets. Well, I do anyhow. And it was a gentleman from St. Davis who had a cousin up at Bailey's Bay. And he went up there to stay one summer. So he says, Aunt Nellie, says, where's your outhouse? Says, I want to stay with baby. She said, you want to use the bathroom? He said, yes. She said, well, go down the hallway, first go on your left. So he goes down the hallway, right? And he looks in there, sees this white bulb. He said, what is this? Well, I'm going to use it anyhow. They didn't say nothing. Goes back to David. Said, my God, the hell. Why, you ain't got those 40 cousins like I got up there this day. Why, you ain't got a 40 bathroom. That's not the word it said, but this is children and elderly folk night, so I'll keep it down a bit. So anyway, you know what he did. So he said, why you sit on this white bulb? Says you do your boo. Says then you push this button. Says the water comes back down for you to wash your face. Oh man. Hey, well I'm telling you, St. Davis, I love you. Yeah. Davis Island goes to Tom one time, and he heard the newspaper guy saying, extra, extra, read all about it, get your mid-ocean. He said, Bill, you better give me 7 of them, because I ain't coming to town no more this week. Oh, man. these Sedaris people. And you know what, the funniest thing, man, every summer, as soon as I couldn't wait till school was up, my mother could tell you, well, we had to walk St. Davis, or hopefully a horse and buggy came by, you got to ride. But we had to walk St. Davis. I didn't care, I want to go to St. Davis. I was with my cousin, so I could kick off my shoes, take my shirt off, and all summer, that's the way it was. But we had a St. Davis Island, every time she saw me, named Maud, God bless her, she's a beautiful person. But Maud just always say to me, said, good God, said, look at Dora's boy. Said, ain't he a darky? Said, it's a crying shame. He's a darky, and he's got straight hair, and I'm a lighty, and I'm got nutty hair. Yeah, that's not fair. But it was funny. When I played Honey Cup, right, for Bailey Fair, but I could have played for St. Davis too. And Maud reminded me, she said, why get out of here? Just go up Bailey's Bay, drink your rum under the cherry tree palm. There's your goddamn traitor, you. Said you should have been playing for some Davis. I used to get riled about that all the time, but I hung in there. And I remember one time listening to the story about when the first airplane came into Bermuda. Well, when, I don't know the child was named, but his son was named Nelson. And he had a brother named Boo. So his daddy said, Nelson, you and Boo better get them chickens here. There's a great big chicken hole up there flying around. I'll tell you, boy, it was fun. Hey, I remember nights, man, laying up in bed listening. Most of these jokes, man, my cousin Evan Kennedy used to talk me most of these jokes. Because he's up all night telling us these jokes. But I tell you one, I remember one he told me, and I'm not sure who the person was, but let's say Styles Lamb. Well, this guy said, good morning, dear Styles. Why, get out of here. Well, I'm getting tired of St. David's. Everybody down here knows me. Because I'm going to get in my boat tonight when everybody sleeps, and I'm going to row to New York. So anyway, that night he snuck down there, got in his boat, and started to run. He run all night. Next morning, I said, hi, Styles. Why, get the heck, why they know me already? He forgot to untie the boat. He ran all night, the boat was tied to the dock. And this is a recent one I picked up. These two St. Davis guys was in town. So the last bus had left. So they couldn't catch a bus, they didn't have the transportation. So they were walking along by Palmetto Road, and they said, hey, Bill, let's steal one of them buses and go to Davis. So they said, okay, well, look, I'll stand guard. You go down the back, go up there and get one of them buses. So all you heard was, blam, blam. So when he got to the front, the bus was mashed straight up. So he said, what happened, man? He said, well, I looked all over the place, and he said, Davis bus was parked way on the back. Davis guy got a Brendan car, and long time ago, you know how the cars used to have some of you remember that. He had this little, the indicator was a lever on the side of the car. And you had to manually pull the lever up. Well, he got this newfangled car that indicators that flash. So he turned his car, he said, "Boy, Bill, it's something wrong with this car." I said, "What happened?" "Man, I turned on the high beams, they work. I turned on the other lights, they work. But every time I turn on this light here, they say, 'What indicator?' It goes on and on." So he said, "Go in the front, I'll show you. When I turn it on, you tell me if it's working." So he turned on the indicator. He said, "Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes." Good night, folks. Love you all.
I was just telling Crystal, isn't it nice how we can make fun of ourselves? Thank you very much. We enjoyed that. I now have the pleasure to introduce Jessie Littleton Baird. Littleton is a citizen of the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe and Wampanoag Women's Medicine Society. She was born and lives in Mashpee. Littleton has 5 children. She is the co-founder of the Wampanoag Language Reclamation Project that began in 1994. This is an intertribal effort between the Mashpee, Aquinnah, and Assonet Wampanoag. The aim of the project is to reclaim the Wampanoag language as a spoken language. There were no speakers of the language for 6 generations. Her 2-year-old daughter, May Alice Wikanashk, is the Wampanoag Nation's first native speaker, and she is the 7th generation. Little also teaches the Wampanoag language in Aquinnah and Mashpee. She received her Master of Science in Linguistics from MIT in the year 2000. She has completed a layperson's grammar of the language, as well as curriculum for teaching, and is currently working towards the completion of a dictionary and expansion of the curriculum. Currently, she is also rebuilding the Pequot language and teaching in Mashantucket, Connecticut. Littleton served one term on the Mashpee Housing Authority as a commissioner and 2 terms on the Mashpee Wampanoag Indian Tribal Council. Jessie has also served in an advisory capacity for past and current Wampanoag cultural projects and films for various organizations and lectures for colleges and universities in the U.S. and other countries. Her other interests include traditional dance, creation of regalia, shell fishing, and writing. Please join me in welcoming Littleton to the stage.
Quat Nikoni Kapian Tamanamu Nipao Qua Pian Damaton Nipao Qua Nipao Qua Pian Damaton Nikona Chip Una Namana Tuman Kadavata mo wachi wami kapas nish. Kadavata mo wachi yug masna ni waki wat ni nachkanat. Namana tumen unani kama hachi kana naman yan. Namana ubi sampayak. Niyat ananaman yan asinat ubi sampayak. Reader, ancestors, we thank you for all things. We ask you to be here with us tonight. We welcome you. We thank you for all the people that are here tonight. We ask you every day to help us to see only what is right. We ask you every day to help us then do only what is right. Tapash. Namatapikwa. See how well you behave? See, you're all Wampanoag speakers already. They stood up, everybody prayed, everybody sat down. Bye. You know, I travel around a lot, and in the United States, out of the United States, and I talk to universities about language programs. I talk to politicians and organizations about Native American languages, and sometimes I give really boring lectures about linguistics. And sometimes I'm speaking to people that are mine. I never, ever, ever get nervous until I'm speaking to people that are mine. And I want to tell you tonight, I'm very nervous because I feel like I'm home. So I want to thank you for that. And I'm glad to see and meet you all. So let me start with a little bit about the history of my people's language. I come from the Wampanoag Nation, and I come from the Mashpee tribe within the Wampanoag Nation. And originally, when the Mayflower landed in the United States, there were 69 tribes in my nation. And we stretched from current-day Provincetown, Massachusetts, west to the Blackstone River in East Providence, and south to Narragansett Bay. That was our territory. And today, surviving on their land that they've been on, that we've been on for thousands of years, there are two tribes left. They are the Mashpee and the Aquinnah. Our language was the first American Indian language to use an alphabetic writing system. The first Bible put to press in the Western Hemisphere was printed in our language. And so by the mid-1700s, that was printed in 1663. By the mid-1700s, there were more Wampanoag people literate in Wampanoag than English people literate in English. Why? Well, we learned quickly that it really didn't matter what two people said to each other, the agreement that they made. Honor and oral tradition were not valued as much as the written document. So Indian folks started writing down everything. They wrote down wills, deeds, personal letters, letters of complaint to the state, etc. And so today, we have those documents surviving. Wampanoag has the largest corpus, the largest body of native written material in the world. So even though our language was outlawed, it was, by the way, there came a time when missionaries first came here, they wanted to save us from ourselves and convert us all. And so they had two choices. They could either try to teach about 100,000 Indians how to speak English and then convert them to Christianity, or they could take all of the religious materials and translate them into our language. So that's what really started this tradition of writing. But people took it further, and so we have this great corpus of material. After the language stopped being spoken, we had 6 generations with no speakers. No one spoke our language at all. And I started to have dreams. And people in my dreams looked familiar. I didn't know them, but they looked really, really familiar. Kind of like being here, really odd. I don't know these people, but they looked like my family. And they were talking to me, and I didn't understand what they were saying. And this went on for some time. And one day I was driving down the road at home, and I saw a street sign for one of the villages at home. And most of the places at home still bear Wampanoag names. And I just looked at that place name, and for some reason the light went on. I said, oh, I wonder if those people are speaking my language to me. And I didn't know anything about it. So that started a long journey. And, you know, it's hard to tell people what language means. Just for encouragement's sake first, I would like to say before I go any further that when this project started, when our language project started, I did not know that never in history had a Native American tribe reclaimed their language with no speakers. It had never been done before. Today, my daughter, Wikanash, my youngest, she's 2, she's our first native speaker in the 7th generation, and our language is welcome home. So, what I want to say to people here is that if there is something in your soul, and there's something in your blood coursing through your veins, and you want to welcome that home, your roots, your history, your family, your culture, if you pray, and if you keep ceremony, and if you approach things in a good way, with a good heart, nothing is impossible. Never mind that there isn't a written document. Never mind that there aren't censuses. We're human beings. We're not made of paper. We're not censuses. We're human beings with a connection to each other. And I would just encourage any people here that want to learn about their heritage and their culture to do that. Because as human beings, we cannot go any further until we know where we've been. So don't be afraid to embrace that. As far as language goes, it's been an incredible experience for my people. It's brought our 2 tribes a lot closer together, and it's meant we're able to do some things that we could not do for a long time. In my way, in our teachings, when you leave the earth, you go back home. And you go back to where all of your people were created. Go back to your people and you go home. And when you go home, you are supposed to be able to present yourself in your language of heritage. And it is an issue of honor. And for a long time, in my nation, our people couldn't do that. Today, there is nobody in my nation that has to say anymore, when I die and I go home, I cannot present myself in my own language. Some of the other things that language has brought home to us is a sense of pride. So science and philosophy, it's all contained in language. For example, all of the nouns, all of the objects that you see in the world are divided into 2 categories in my language. Things that are animate, meaning living, and things that are inanimate, that are not living. And it's not that simple. It's not very predictable. So some of it is. So we're gonna play a little game. Let's see who can guess this. I'm gonna tell you some of the rules of what makes something considered animate, and some of the rules which make things considered inanimate. Jason, you can't play. He's a fluent speaker, so he can't play. It's cheating. And let's see what we can learn about this. Now, first of all, you have to know if something like a table is considered animate or inanimate, because when you say more than one, it's a different plural. It's a different ending. And if I say I see a table and I see a man, the way I see is different, depending on whether I'm talking about the table or the man, because the man's animate and the table isn't. So you have to know what things are considered. So here's one of the rules. If the thing gets about on its own, like we do, it's animate. That's pretty easy, right? Pretty simple. If it can't get about on its own, probably not animate. If the thing causes something else to move in a full circle, it's animate. Got it? Okay, so let's leave that there for now. It's a couple of rules. Okay, so what do you think the body's considered, animate or inanimate? You're right, got it. So what about your finger? Nope. Can it get around on its own? If I chop it off, where's that finger going? It's going on the ground. Not going anywhere on its own. It's inanimate. Now, what about, what about my hips? Animate or inanimate? Inanimate? Animate.
They cause something to move in a full circle. Torso. So my hip bones are animate. What about my elbow and my knee? Inanimate, right? Because they only go back and forth, right? If your leg goes like this in a circle, you gotta go to the doctor. That's not supposed to happen. Knees inanimate. What about your wrist bone? Animate or inanimate? You got it. What about, okay, so another rule is if something causes something else to move in a directed fashion, animate. What about a boat? Animate or inanimate? A boat. Inanimate. Because the boat, if you sit in a canoe or a boat, it really doesn't move in a directed fashion on its own, does it? But what about the paddle? Animate. The paddle's animate because the paddle's what gives the boat direction, right? What about an onion? Why animate? It causes something to move. What does the onion cause to move? Yes, it pulls the water from your face. Onion is animate, causes something to move. What about the moon? Why? It moves. It moves its position in the sky. What about the ocean? Animate or inanimate? Inanimate. So, you notice how some days you look at the ocean and it's like glass, perfectly still. It's not moving on its own, is it? But there's a unit of energy in the ocean that makes it move. What is that? Tide's animate, and wind is animate, and the wave is animate. It's that unit of energy that moves the water. What about the sun? Animate or inanimate? I'm sorry? It's inanimate. The sun is inanimate. Now, wait a minute, hold up. When you wake up in the morning, what does it look like the sun is doing? It looks like it's rising in the east, traveling across the sky, and setting in the west, right? But it's not, is it? Now, what does that tell you that Indian people knew long before Europeans? That the sun was stationary, the moon moved, and it was the earth moving and not the sun. So there's these philosophies and things in science that we can look at and see in our language. So that's kind of boring stuff though, but you guys did really good. But I want to do a little demonstration. So I need some volunteers. Jason, you should come up and bring that chair with you because they can sort of watch you and kind of cheat. Okay, so, and I'm gonna have to, can you guys hear me on this thing? Okay, let's see, I'll pick. Get to pick, let me see.
Get Frankie up here.
What am I gonna pick on, huh?
Get Frankie up here.
Languages in the language family that our language is from. And Wampanoag is only one of them. But even though the language family is really large, and there's lots of tribes that still speak their languages in the family, there's no set curriculum that you can get and plug your language into. So I've had to experiment with teaching, different teaching styles. So this method that we do is called TPR. And so the first thing to do in learning a language is to hear a sound, see an action, and make a connection in your mind. That's how our children learn. They don't pop out, go into language class, and they don't pop out speaking. They watch and they listen for a long time. So that's where we start. But before we start, everybody's going to learn to introduce themselves. Rule number 1. And don't look at your neighbor for help. Don't be helping your neighbor. Don't do that. Natasui's Jessie. Takatasui's.
Natasui's Jason.
Natasawis Jessie, Takatasawis. Natasawis Jessie, Takatasawis. Natasawis Jessie, Takatasawis.
Natasawis Kim.
Natasawis Jessie, Takatasawis.
Natasawis Heather.
Natasawis Jessie, Takatasawis.
Natasawis Crystal.
Natasawis Jessie, Takatasawis.
Natasawis Julie.
Aha! Woohoo! Nipa wikwa. Namatapikwa. Nipa wikwa. Namatapikwa. Namatapikwa. Nipawikwa. Pamashakwa. Akwikwa. Pama kwaikwa. Pamashakwa. Akwikwa. Pama kwaikwa. Namatapikwa. Heather, Nipawash. Nipawash. Ah, you were Nathan. Namatash. Namatash. Yeah. Nipawash. Amashash. Akwish. Obama Kwaish. Namatash. Nipawikwa. Amashakwa. Akwikwa. Pamakonkwa. Pamakonkwa. Akwikwa. Pamakonkwa. Akwikwa. Pamashakwa. Akwikwa. Frankie. Pamashash. Pamashash. Akwish. Pamakons. Pamakons. Akwish. Pamashakwa. Akwikwa. Pamashakwa. 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 Namatapikwa. Oh, Crystal Kachapa. Crystal Chapapu. Oh. Nipawikwa. Pamashakwa. Pamakonkwa. Pamakonkwa. Namatapikwa. Nipawikwa. Ano naman ni ako? Nakis. Punoshnat. Punoshnat. Manushni. Kasa. Pamashakwa. bao quá, ôi, bao quá. Sharp quá, mama sharp quá, mama sharp quá, mama sharp quá. Ah, nama tapi quá. Ah, Jason Chapaco. Big Bobby. Mama sharp quá. Mama con quá. Mama sharp quá. Mama sharp quá. Nama tapi quá. For one. Thank you very much. Thank you everybody for volunteering. It's really, we have a lot of fun and we play lots of games that as adults we haven't played in a long time. I was at a conference once and one team displayed, they taught their team how to sing head, shoulders, knees, and toes in their language, but it would be really long hours. Before I finish up, does anybody have any questions of me? No? To say great spirit, you say man, but if you, it's a little complicated if you say mine, but just to say, it's a high spirit, so it's a little different in our culture where you have a high spirit, but it's not sort of like, the spirit is creation. It's all of creation. It's an intelligence that's all of creation. And the word for that is manat. Manat. Any other questions? No? Thank you very much for coming this evening.
As Little Joe started speaking, she reminded me of what I must sound like sometimes when I'm teaching, because when I'm talking, it looks like they don't know what I'm saying, and they're not responding, they're not moving, and I think that's what I sound like sometimes. But I got some good ideas to go back and try with my children next week. Okay, coming to the stage now is Chairman of the St. David's Island Indian Committee, Mr. Stephen Tucker. Welcome, Stephen.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed tonight's festivities. This has been a great experience. When we opened the show, Crystal talked about some of the things that we've accomplished. And what I'm going to do right now is talk about our goals, what's been the foundation of what we've been doing, and why we started. We have basically these 6 goals and outlines that have guided us to what we see today as what we'll see next week at St. David's Cricket Field as well. The first one is to increase our community's awareness of the rich culture and the uniqueness of St. David's Islanders. And you've seen from the film earlier today, that's quite evident. The amount of stories that we can share and laugh at each other, it's priceless. To increase public awareness of the diverse and close-knit community of St. David's and the opportunities of diverseness in Bermuda overall. We don't want to think that we are living on an island, but we don't want to think we're just isolated. We need to share and share other people's experience as well. To plan future events, future activities for all Bermudian, Native American Indians, and to encourage genealogical research and student educational exchange and cultural programs. And as Crystal was laid out earlier, that's one of the things we're working on until next May. We've been communicating with some home schools as well as some schools in Rhode Island and working on some exchange programs. And we're working on the parameters of how we formulate our choices in students. To seek answers to the questions such as, who am I, which have long been unanswered. And I think that's something that resonates in a lot of people. A lot of people have a feeling of who they are, but trying to identify is a bigger thing. To involve as many people as possible in the Reconnection celebration. By your presence here, that is testament to that. And for that, I thank you for coming out. And lastly, to augment Bermuda pride. Jessie just made a comment earlier, which is very key to what we do. You don't know where you're going unless you know where you come from. And this is one of the things that we fortify ourselves with. I want to also notice one thing also with our girls, which is very clear. We did not mention one tribe. Our community consists of people from many different tribes, many different heritages. And that's our goal. We want to encourage as many people who take part and share with us. We have people who have connections to Cherokee, Blackfoot, Wampanoag, Shinnecock, and the list goes on. And forgive me if I don't name everybody's connection. But this is what our community is about, to bring everybody together and to share who we are. Now, I'm going to introduce you to some of our dancers. Our dancers work very hard tonight for you guys, and they are excellent. They'll put the show on at the Heritage Night in St. George's, and you can hear a pin drop. There's one scene, the Gumbies come out and drawing the crowd in, but when the girls danced, the crowd just stood motionless and in awe of what they saw. Also with our dancers, we have two male dancers, Kevin Watson and Antoine Lugo. Both of them have competed in last year's Skimitzen at Foxwood. Now I can tell you that Kevin placed 5th out of 42 contestants, his first time coming out. And I think that he definitely deserves a round of applause for that. And I'm not going to sell Antoine short either. Antoine placed very honorably in the event as well. He's also very keen on teaching others, youngsters, some of his dance. Having said that, the Native Roof Dancers, as we're called, are here tonight representing the St. David's Island Indian Committee. This committee falls under the St. David's Island Historical Society and was established in February 2001 in commemoration of the reconnection of the Native descendants here in Bermuda with Native American tribes from the north and southeastern coast of the United States. Ever since the St. David's Island Indian Committee was established, they have stayed connected with their Native cousins from overseas, building stronger ties with each other and sharing cultural traditions. Amongst the many things shared was the gift of dance, which honors the ancestors, elders, people, tribe, and the earth. The St. David's Indian Committee members soon joined in the Native dance and came to develop their own dance groups, both men and women. The women brought to the island the former Miss Mashantucket Tribal Princess, Morningstar, who first came in April 2006 and taught the Eastern traditional dance and Eastern blanket dance, which we will see in a moment. Morningstar was recently brought back in March of this year to teach the jingle and fancy show dances. These dances have been seen in the upcoming Native American Festival next week, June 23rd and 24th. Please tune in to the beat of the drum and welcome the Native Root Dancers, as they share tonight the women's Eastern traditional and blanket dance, which represents the woman and her stages in life. Thank you.
This dance requires enormous grace, stamina, and concentration. Women move their feet in time with the drum while keeping close to the ground. During honor beats, women raise their hands to honor drums and relative men. The women hold a blanket with fringes called a shawl over their left arm.
Help us to never forget how our ancestors treated one another with kindness and respect. This has always been and always will be our true strength.
What you're about to see is the Eastern Blanket Dance. This dance originated in the East Coast, particularly by the Narragansett tribe located in Rhode Island. Beautiful blankets made by women in their wetues during the winter season were honored through the dance and displayed proudly. The dance begins with the women holding their blankets wrapped around them with their arms outstretched to honor the 4 directions and seasons with the drum beat. The blankets represent the caring and warmth the woman shows for her family and loved ones. The blanket also has many uses in a woman's life and represents a woman's stages in life. The Eastern blanket dance is also used as a courtship dance. The young women would show off their blankets in hopes of attracting a brave. The dance would end with the young woman placing the blanket in front of the brave of her choice, and if he accepts her, he would retrieve the blanket and wrap himself and the young woman in it and dance off to many happy days.
Mayor, help us to carry this on.
Which is one of the oldest dances still known in its original form. In times of the war, the Pequot warriors would gather together at the center of the village, or in winter, they would gather in the longhouse. There, a fire would be burning, and a pole in the center of the ring would represent the enemy. Sometimes the pole would be dressed in clothing to represent the enemy. The warriors would stand around the outside of the dance circle and enter the circle with their feet stomping hard to the rhythm of the drum and rattle. The warriors would create a story in their dance that would imitate a battle with the enemy. This style of war dance was done to prepare the warriors for battle. In order to preserve our original identity of the Eastern war dance, we use the name Eastern Straight Dance.
Yeah. We are excited to have been given the opportunity to share who we are as St. David's people, and we're thrilled with the positive interest after being pinned with a negative stigma for so many years. As with many others throughout history, we have managed to hold our heads high despite the ridicule that came along with being ourselves, and stuck together as strong people. We have always known deep inside who we are and been proud of it. As we wear our lineage on our faces, we keep family traditions in our hearts and see surviving characteristics in our way of life. Although some of us have migrated out of our place of origin, having moved off of our little island of St. David's, we still carry tremendous pride in knowing that we are St. David's Islanders. We are assured that our ancestors will always guide us, and our elders can rest easy as we vow to continue to uplift ourselves and stay together as a strong community. Although we consist of many families, we realize that we are all one people, being cousins one way or the other. Thank you to all who have passed on, and to those who are still living today, who make the story of St. David's and its people so very interesting to tell. I'd like to now offer an official thank you to the following individuals and government bodies who made tonight's program possible, and these are as follows. Thank you to the Minister of Community and Cultural Affairs, Mr. Wayne M. Parenchief, JPMP, and we'd like to further extend that to his staff, Ms. Ellen Kate Horton, Mrs. Heather Whalen, Mrs. Louise Tannick, Ms. Angela Todd. Special thanks to Dr. Kim Dismont Robinson and the Historical Heartbeats Lecture Series Committee, consisting of Mr. James Smith, Mr. Andrew Birmingham, and Sister Rolo. Ms. Lucinda Sperling, thank you to her. That's the one responsible for the St. David's DVD. Mrs. Dora Hollis, Mrs. Ronnie Chameau, Mrs. Beulah Fogo, thank you so much for your support. Mr. Stuart Hollis, and the Native Roots dancers, the MCs Julie Fogo and Crystal Miners, the St. David's Night Committee, the stage manager and chairman of the St. David's Island Indian Committee, Mr. Stephen Tucker, to the exhibitors, Mrs. Alma Brownie Lamb, Mr. James Smith, and Ms. Heather Brangman. Thanks also out to the sound technician, Mr. Chris Swan, and a special thank you to the guest speaker, Mrs. Jessie Littleton-Baird. I'd like to also acknowledge her husband, Jason Baird, in the audience, and Mrs. Kathy Jensen, if she's here tonight, and any other government ministers that I haven't named off, or VIPs. I apologize, but thank you so much. I'd also like to remind everyone that the committee has worked hard to do a number of things for fundraising. We do have calendars, t-shirts, throws for sale, and those can be found on the outside of the door as you're passing to leave. And thank you. I'm sorry, I'm through with the thank yous, but thank you. And also, you can pick up a copy of the St. David's Island, an Island Near Bermuda DVD at Carter House on South Side, and the Animal Garden on Cemetery Road, and that's Lucinda's DVD that we saw earlier in the show. Thank you all so much for coming, and I truly hope that you enjoyed yourself.
On behalf of the Department of Community and Cultural Affairs, I'd like to thank you all very much for coming out this evening. The programs that we do would not be what they are without the support of people such as yourself who come out for these programs. We very much appreciate all the hard work that the St. David's community has put into making this program a success. So thank you very, very much, and we look forward to seeing many of you next week.